Cristiano Ronaldo was challenging, but also really on it. And he had a mindset that was fantastic. Really, really challenging, but fantastic. He was the best in the world when he came to Man United in his head.
You mentioned he was challenging to manage. Why?
Because he was a star.
Who's the best and worst trainer that you coached in Man United?
Brian McClare, when I played, wasn't a great trainer.
Okay.
You know, if you did in those days, we would do a lot of running and things like that, and Brian was always blowing. He was blowing a gasket. You know, he was not interested in all that. But come to a game, he'd probably run the furthest. If you put a tracker on him now, he probably would have run the furthest in a game. You know, and there are players like that. So, did what he had to do in training.
Okay.
Did enough, I suppose, in order to get him to the game. But in the game, came alive. So, I wouldn't say you could class him as the worst trainer, because players work out what they need to do in order to prepare themselves to get to the game. Best trainer are usually the ones that put everything in. Cristiano Ronaldo was I would say challenging, but also really on it all the time. He would prepare to train, and prepare again to train. Ready for the next session. Not always the star man in training, but putting a lot into what he needed to be the best in the world.
Yeah.
And he had a mindset that was fantastic. Really, really challenging, but fantastic. He was the best in the world when he came to Man United in his head. And he was only just starting out in the game. But he knew.
And could you see it?
Yeah.
Was there a sense of that? Like, this guy's going to be one of the best ever?
Yeah. There are moments when you come across people. One player I could say that about now would be Jude Bellingham. And I saw Jude, just going off piste a bit, but I saw Jude at Birmingham. He played 4 positions in one game at 16 in the Championship, and he was man of the match in all positions in
That's
that one
crazy.
game. That one game, and I just went along because I'd heard something. I didn't go because I was scouting, but you go, try and keep a low profile, but in the end, you're coming back and going, well, I've just seen probably the next Brian Robson here.
Wow.
And I played with Brian, so I understood that. I was thinking probably could be better than Brian Robson, but he was 16. But then you look at someone, you know, like we just talked about there, and just stand out a mile, you know. But not just ability, courage. You know, they had courage and determination, and knew where they wanted to go, and all that comes with it. The frustrations of not progressing fast enough or not challenging him enough. You know, Cristiano was all that. He was all that. But ultimately, he's still playing now because he did a lot of work, intensities that's kept him going now, but quality work, you know, not just on the field, off the field, but a real mentality, you know, to just push.
You mentioned he was challenging to manage. Why?
Because he was a star. He was a star, and you knew what you had in a player like that. And there was other players, but Cristiano sticks out because he was a match winner. He could go off piste, Cristiano, you know, because of his ability. So when you've got a team of players that function really, really well together, and the opposition have a team of players that function really well together and are good teams, it comes down to the individual in a moment.
Yeah.
And he had that. He had that in bucket loads, where he could literally get you out of your seat and you would go, wow, that wasn't in the script. How did he do that? And you could ask him and he wouldn't even know. He just does it. I just do it.
Just genius.
And it's brilliant. It's brilliant, that. And listen, you can't coach that. You know, you can't take credit for that. That's there. You know what I mean? But subtly, you can bring things out of him, you know, like team play. Cristiano was a massive individual at Sporting. You know, you see that kid and he's running the show. You know, it's him and the ball.
Yeah.
There's no other ball. Everybody else needs another ball because he's not giving it to you. You know, and that was that in training, things like that. And eventually you got to sort of have those conversations of, yeah, we want loads of that. But remember, there's 10 other players out there as well that you can pass it. So you restrict in training certain things, and he'd hate it. He'd hate it because it wasn't his strength.
Just wanted to drill around
But
everyone.
then when you see him do it, and the players appreciate that, and then he takes that with him to Real Madrid, and then he goes beyond that, and you think some of those things he learned at Sporting came to Man U, and a lot of the things he learned at Man U he took to Real Madrid, and then he's gone on again, and it's wonderful.
Yeah.
It's wonderful to see that was the guy with the open mindset to be able to say, I can do that. I can bring that here and take that there, and this is the moment I use this, and forever pushing the boundaries for himself, but also the coaches to make sure he developed more and more. And look what he's doing now. He's in another European final. I think he's broke a record, being selected for another European Championships.
Yeah.
And I can guarantee he'll score goals. He'll score goals in it. He could even take them all the way to winning it again. And what is he now? 39? Is he knocking on the door at nearly 40? Wow.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
Why didn't it work out for him coming back to Man United?
I think probably he looked at the standard of when he left to when he came back.
Okay.
And I don't think he probably understood that. Maybe. I've never had the conversation with him, but what he did bring back was his high level. He had that in abundance.
Was that helpful or harmful at that point, though? Because if the other players aren't up to it...
It was helpful because you're talking about, in that dressing room, you've got a world-class player. I'm not saying there weren't others in there, because there were some very, very strong-minded individuals in that dressing room. But he was bringing this high standard of performance and appreciation of what it takes to be a serial winner into a dressing room that he was looking to progress. He was looking to push it on, and for whatever reason, it didn't work out in the way I think he expected it to, and he made the choices he made and moved on, and that happens. That happens. You don't have a career that always is beautiful, and there are certain things you have to live with and consequences to actions. But ultimately, he made his choices for himself to move on.
And I guess with a character like that, things like the Piers Morgan interview are possibilities.
Well, he got a great scoop out of it, didn't he? I don't know whether that was more about Ronaldo or more about Piers.
Broke records in views, I think. Since Sir Alex retired, Man United have obviously struggled. Do you think the Glazers are to blame for that? You obviously worked for the Glazers for a long time.
It's easy to point fingers. I'm not that type of guy. I think you work within the confines of what you've got to work with. I never had any real relationship with the owners because that wasn't my role.
Yeah,
that was a manager's job and a chief executive's role. But I could honestly say that I was never restricted in my role in any way. Off the field, supporters can talk about the Glazers all the time. There's been demonstrations. They don't seem to be too far away from that all the time.
Yeah.
But you've got to get on with the game. It's the game. It's the match and everything like that. And I couldn't affect anything higher up. That's some other's role and responsibility. But they've been there a while now. They've now moved it on into a different environment in a way. I mean, reading between the lines because I'm not prominent there anymore. But there's a slight new shareholding going on. I wouldn't say ownership, but certainly 25% or whatever the deal they've struck up is there for everybody to see. And football decisions look as though they're going to change. Yeah, there's a lot of talk.
Do you think it'll work? Do you think Ineos and Sir Jim will improve things?
Well, it has to work. It really has to start to show signs of working, but it's not going to happen overnight. I mean, I think they've done a lot of groundwork. They're looking at it. I know. Mr. Brailsford, I've had chats with him before when I've not been at Man United and he was at Nice and things like that. Where we've had calls online and they were just starting out at their new club in Nice, a new sort of environment for him. So he's probably learnt fast, and he's bringing that to Manchester United. And he's a successful guy. Both of them are.
Yeah.
the business of football is a little bit different, and they'll understand that and realise it, as many people do. But you've got to get a winning team on the football field, and how you do that, along with everything else that probably they've been talking about.
Stadium and
training ground, all these things. You know, a lot of it is talk.
That's something I wanted to ask as well, actually. Cristiano Ronaldo was quite critical of the training facilities when he came back. When you came back to Man United, did you get the same sense, thinking things haven't been further developed?
I didn't have a swimming pool and a sauna in my house, and I didn't have 20-odd pitches at home. I had a lawn, and, you know, I had a bath and a shower. Whereas, you know, when you're in a training ground with all that, I appreciated what I got, okay? But there are issues, you know, that buildings, you know, we all have houses, and, you know, if we don't paint them regularly enough, or we don't do the pointing on the walls, it starts to corrode a little bit. So I think there was an element of that, yeah.
When you came back, and you think,
when I came back,
the facilities
but everything was there.
Moved
everything
on.
Was there.
Yeah.
It was just a case of brightening it up, sprucing it up, you know, that type of thing. I think Cristiano realised as well that you've got to also understand, all these players now in the Premier League, they have these facilities at home.
Yeah.
It's amazing, really.
He's expecting the absolute,
you know, and they have chefs
level.
and they have kitchens that cost more than my house. You know what I mean? And they have saunas, gyms, pools. They have gardens that stretch for like 3-4 acres or more. They have football pitches in them now. You know, you see it all the time on the TV. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And rightly so, if they can afford to do that. So their standard of living is huge, absolutely huge compared to your supporter. And they expect that when they come to work.
Right.
You know, and you've got to provide that. You've got to get better at that. You know, I'm not saying it's got to be bigger and bigger and bigger, because sometimes small's beautiful, you know. But there are expectations now within Premier League football clubs as to what level and standard you have to meet. Man United had it all there. Yes, they had a few porter cabins on the car park and things like that, but tell me a place that doesn't, when you need to grow and grow quickly. So it's easier to get a porter cabin on the car park and then wait to build something. I get that. But ultimately, you need to maintain our standards in order to attract and make those, as Sir Dave Brailsford says, make those small improvements, you know. And each small improvement becomes a bigger thing in the grand scheme of things, doesn't it? You know?
If you want to watch my full podcast with Sir Alex Ferguson's right-hand man, you can do so right here.